welcome to episode 7 of the Hoop Threads podcast. I got Kyle Jakobe here of Sweat Performance, East Coast Bump, Poly Skill Development. Kyle, great to have you on, man.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's start kind of where it all started with you. You're a McDonough grad. I was listening to the podcast with the Six Man. Shout out to them, by the way, for all the info I got from that interview. But you said that freshman year was the first year they started recruiting. You had 8 D1 players and an NFL player in your team. You didn't really start getting minutes until you became a senior. So talk about kind of, how you came about going to McDonough and kind of what you expected versus what actually happened.
Yeah, my exposure to high-level basketball, going into McDonough was Cockeysville Rec Council basketball was the most high-level basketball I'd ever played, to which, I was ruining that league. I was dropping 25 a game, and I thought I kind of walked on water. Had never really had any exposure to AAU. My dad, my older brother weren't ever really tied into that, so I didn't have a lot of guidance in that regard. And so I didn't want to go to McDonough. I was actually, I was probably the least happy kid about going there in history. My local school was Delaney. All my friends were going to Delaney. Delaney had really good basketball teams during that time, and that's where I wanted to go. And, but I was a kid who, when I was in high volume classrooms, I was just like a knucklehead. I wasn't working as hard as I could. I was getting not great grades at a school where it wasn't super challenging academically. And then, so when my parents took me to McDonough to take their entrance exam, I did great on the entrance exam, and yet my grades were horrible at a very average school. And so I'll never forget the guy who now is the headmaster of McDonough, Dave Ferrace. He was looking at my 2 things, basically my academic history at Cockeysville Middle School, and he was looking at my entrance exam, and more or less he was just kind of oh, so you're just an asshole. You know what I mean? And so, and so he was an admissions guy at that point. Now he's the headmaster of McDonough. But, that dude took a chance on me because really based on my history work, I didn't deserve to go there. And I also had no legacy with the school in terms of family members who had gone before me, things like my sister had transferred in as a junior, but there was no long lineage of Jakobe's going to McDonough. And so then that's a pretty big thing there. So I ended up going there thinking I was going to run stuff in basketball. I'd seen their team play the year before. Just didn't have anybody I would say was super notable, nothing I felt like I hadn't seen before. And then I walked into school, and the first thing I see in a summer workout is this 6'4" guy who's just stripping people at half court, tomahawk dunking, hitting threes. And I literally thought it was the equivalent of walking in and seeing, John Wall, at your high school practice. So I was oh my God, this is awesome. We have NBA guys come to our gym to work out in the summertime. And I ran up to our athletic director at the time and I was Coach, which NBA guy is that? Which player is he for the Wizards? And he's that guy's not in the NBA. He's an incoming freshman like you. And I was oh, hell no, I'm never going to play at this school. And then I come to realize it's the first year McDonough had really gone into kind of the recruiting and things like that. So, I in my freshman orientation group, I was this does not look like the basketball team I saw last year. We had guys with full grown beards. I hadn't seen a beard in a kid my age in my entire life. As guys that are 6'4" with 6'7" wingspans. And it just ended up being essentially me from thinking I'm going to be on varsity as a freshman to I was fresh soft as a freshman, which basically is that's your death knell in terms of knowing you'll never play varsity. And then I, played JV, and then as a junior, made varsity, never even sniffed the court, not even in blowout wins. And, eventually by my senior year, I just worked and worked and worked, man. I was relentless. I wasn't mature enough. I didn't have the strength. I was 6 feet, 150 pounds when I graduated high school. I had guys who were essentially fully grown or 95% of the way there by the time we got there. Some guys who were fully grown when they came into 9th grade and never grew again. I was definitely a late bloomer, but I was also surrounded with super talented guys I'd never seen before. It was a huge adjustment period. And it's just one of those things you got to decide how much it means to you. And, it meant a lot to me. And I'd put a lot of time into that point. I just didn't really ever care to quit. It wasn't how I was raised. I was hey, I'm going to give it everything I got and rather fail in humiliating fashion than quit. So I just I would rather work as hard as I could and be yeah, I wasn't good enough. So it just turned out by my senior year, we had a really good team. We finished, I think, 3rd and, in Baltimore. And I think it was probably the highest McDonough ever finished, actually, and had a great team. Had 8 Division I athletes in different sports, and really competitive. And I ended up earning playing time. Went from 0 minutes to start my senior year to where I got up to like 5-10 minutes a game, and I started playing. So I started playing because the guy who started in front of me, who was an elite football player and ended up playing 7 years in the NFL, Eric King. I started playing because Eric was like 5'9", and he was obsessed with trying to dunk in a game. And so the first time he gets a breakaway, he jumps up. This is the first time I get in meaningful minutes in the season. And he takes off, tries to dunk, goes off the back of the rim. And we had this like crazy Irish coach who's now the athletic director at McDonough, who lost his mind and hated if you missed a dunk. Like he was like, if you try to dunk and you miss, like you were going to get benched for some amount of time. So immediately looking at the bench press, he's like, Kyle, get Eric. So as I'm stuffing in, I go up to Eric and I just grab him. He's like, damn, man. And I was like, E, you were so close, man. I was like, you were so close. It's like the gym would have gone crazy if you dunked that. So he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, yeah, man. So I sub in, get my minutes, play pretty well. Next game, we're playing in the game. Eric gets a breakaway, goes up, tries to dunk, and misses it. He's like, sub. I was like, Kyle, subs me. And I was like, Eric, man, things would have popped off that time. You were so close that time. So I literally start getting my playing time because the guy in front of me is trying to dunk and he's missing. And then I'm playing well on my minutes and I'm encouraging him every time. Like, ooh, man, like that was the one. If you'd have done that, the whole gym would have melted. So that was how I started getting my playing time at McDonough as a senior. By the end of the year, I was getting anywhere from like 15 to 20 minutes a game on a top 5 team in the area, which was more than anyone ever thought I was going to do there.
That's some gamesmanship there. So talk about like kind of that experience and how that kind of led to you really grinding and working hard to put the time in.
Yeah, it's just it's knowing that if you put in consistent time, work, energy over a period of time, like things are going to change. And things sometimes you can look around and things might change faster for someone else. And, things might change slower for you. Things did not change quickly for me. But, like, I was married to the thought in my head that I was going to do that so consistently for such a period of time that even if I developed more slowly, then I was going to catch all the guys every time they took their foot off the gas. And so it was just like, that process, it has its frustrations. It has its times where you question whether or not you're going to continue playing or whether it's worth it or whether there's ever a future for it. But the thing that was just compounded for me was like, an addiction to progression. Like it didn't matter to me if I only got a little better over a period of time. But I knew I understood that like my progression wasn't going to go like this. Your progression is like, you have your ups and downs, your times where you question it, your times where it's fulfilling, times where it's not. And, but I just I began to enjoy all of it. When I failed, it wasn't like, oh, I failed. It was kind of like, why did I fail? What can I do? How can I change that? Why can these dudes steal the ball from me all the time? How do I get past a guy who's going to be an NFL DB who, he runs a 4-4 linear, but damn near runs a 4-4 laterally too. Like what the hell kind of freak athlete is this? How do I, solve this problem? It just like all those things, that ended up translating the rest of my life. But it's like you end up seeing all these challenges and the adversity as like problems to solve versus just like problems that are, unbreakable and you can't get through them. So yeah, I mean, that was really the process of it. Was putting in that work. I used to have this thing, man. This is no joke. I used to go out and I would shoot baskets in a park. Sometimes I'd shoot them in my driveway, which is the worst because the only basket we had in our driveway was like a 45-degree angle like this. So if I shot on the right baseline, it was like shooting on a 6-foot rim. And if I shot on the left baseline, it was like shooting on a 14-foot rim, which probably explains why my baseline threes weren't really like on par with the rest of the court my whole career. But I had this thing where like when the ball bounced, I'd be working out and I had stuck in my head that I could always hear another ball bouncing in the distance. And I was like convinced that I wouldn't go inside until I heard that ball stop bouncing. And like what it really was that ball, when it bounced, was like echoing off other like buildings or houses, you know what I mean? Like that. So if I was in a park, it was really just that ball would bounce and it would like, noise will bounce off something and come back. So that's what I hear. But I'd be in my head and I was always like, oh man, that little jackass, he's not going to outwork me. I can hear that dude in the distance bouncing his ball. So I'd be like outside just working on my game for obscene amounts of hours. Well, like eventually the only way I would go home is I would convince myself that I had been out there before him. So I was like, yeah, you can try to catch up. You didn't do the quality of work I did out here. And then I would like go in when I was exhausted. But it was like for years of my life, I would always hear that, and it would make me so mad. I think it genuinely took me like 18 months to realize it was an echo, because I was like, who the hell is this other kid in the neighborhood? I never see him, but he's always working on his game. So.
Got you. So let's talk about, college. You played 4 years at Gettysburg, started all 28 games as a junior, and I believe all but 3 games as a senior. Just looking up some stats. You shot 39% from three and tied for the lead in assists. Talk about kind of your game and your progression in college, and then we'll get into some of the training stuff.
Yeah, progression in college was, I went to probably the worst possible place I could go in terms of like offense and skill set and the things that I could do versus where I played. We played a Princeton offense, which was just very, very, very difficult. It's run through your big man. There wasn't a lot of options. We ran a very vanilla Princeton. It wasn't like Princeton where you can have opportunities to express yourself. It was very cookie cutter. But at that point, I was like, hey, this is where I am. I had a major that I liked, and I was like, let me stay here. But what I always really valued the most was defense. And we actually, believe it or not, we never once – well, we did one day. We never once practiced defense in college. We didn't do a defensive drill. We never did a shell. We never – not once. All we did was work on the Princeton offense. So it was the craziest thing because, our coach would talk to us about how we had, we have the best, scoring defense. But I'm like, we don't have the best scoring defense because our defense is good. We have the best scoring defense because we limit the possessions in a game. I played great defense. I would say I was probably the best defender in our conference. And, our coach who was it's the weirdest thing to have a coach who's obsessed about the offense and you run a Princeton offense. It just was if you're going to run a Princeton offense, I feel like you should be really worried about your defense. But we didn't. But I carved that out where basically anybody we played who was a top player, I would always guard them. I was seen as a guy who could lock those guys up. And, I really embraced that role. I always enjoyed that. It wasn't like that happened to me in college. That's how my dad used to play in church leagues. That was what I was used to seeing it was just if I had a great scoring game and I didn't play great defense, my dad would never talk about scoring. It was only thing he cared about was effort, energy, and did I do the things that it took to help my team win? And I remember distinctly one time I went to had 25 points in a game, and I leave the game, and my dad would always be in the gym, and he wasn't in the gym. And so, I walk out of the gym, and I go to the car, and my dad's out there. So I already know something's up. I'm already oh, damn it, what did I do? But I knew I didn't play as hard as I could on defense, one of the very few times in my career. And my dad was like, hey, man, as soon as I got in the car, he was just basically, let me know the next time you're going to F around and not put all your effort and energy into the game. Because I would much rather save 3 hours on my Saturday and just stay at home and spend time with your mom than come watch you and whatever you just did. And it was just it was awesome because every other parent in the gym was oh, Kyle, you played such a great game, all these sorts of things. And my dad was humiliated, because I didn't play as hard as I could. And I didn't. I can tell you I didn't compete as hard as I could. But I took that same energy to college where I would say a lot of parents and players, they put so much stock into scoring and that being the definitive value in terms of whether or not you contributed to a win or not. And to this day, man, I just don't do that. I carved out my way in college by just playing defense and doing everything it took to win games. And I think even my coach, who didn't really understand that or understand me over time, was just we need this dude on the court to have the best chance to win. And it goes to this day. I played a little bit of pickup with my guys recently, my high level guys, and I think they're just confused out there. Why the hell does this dude play so hard? And it's just, and that's why. I mean, I'm always just it's just how I'm programmed. One day the wheels are going to fall off, but I'm not going to do it going half speed. The wheels are going to fall off when I'm out there diving for a loose ball as a 40-year-old.
That's when you're going to hang them up. Yeah, I saw that your parents are from Kansas, so that Midwestern vibe is definitely consistent with defense. So let's talk.
My dad is like Robert De Niro from Meet the Parents. If you've ever seen that movie, he's the most straight edge, human lie detector, out of his mind, most competitive dude I've ever met in my life. I didn't see my dad laugh till he was 45.
So I read something that your college coach said you introduced a new off-season training regimen to your teammates, and that you've also after practice, your college practice, you would drive like an hour and a half back to Baltimore to train kids. Talk about kind of what got you started in training, and maybe what interested you in that profession.
Yeah, so the training was just like, I didn't really know where I was going to go in my life. Wasn't a great student. Didn't know how I was ever going to like make money or like monetize anything. I was perennial, like I was like a B- student. So I was like around 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, my entire academic life, and sometimes worse. But it's just like when you're in that situation, you know that you're not going to make money playing a sport because I'm a Division III guy, and then I know I'm not going to make money. It kind of in my head based on institutional standards, basically not good enough. Then you kind of get in your head where you're like, all right, like what am I going to be able to do? Like what would someone pay me for? So I was almost like, hey, I'm going to have to do some type of manual labor, something like that, because I know I can work really hard, and didn't know what that looked like. And then I started reaching out to guys when I was a junior in college because I'd always really liked training and like preparation and things like that. And I was like, hey, maybe if I can get the right mentors, I can get in the right situation and be around guys that can like teach me to where I can be kind of a lead at this thing. And I knew I wanted to teach. I didn't know in what capacity. And I know I cared a ton about sports. And so I wanted to be around sports. And then it all kind of came together where these guys down at Brick Bodies in Baltimore, Maryland, called them up. They said, essentially, hey, yeah, we'll hire you and we'll mentor you, start teaching you how to, like cultivate a following and, all these different types of things. And the guys were legit. Like they really knew their stuff. One of the guys ended up going on to start Under Armour, performance centers. And the other guy was training, like 20 NFL guys at the time and a bunch of the highest level athletes in the area. And so those two guys became my mentors. And I would drive down. Yeah, man, I would drive down from practice my junior and senior year. Like after practice might end at 6, sometimes 7, sometimes 8. And even if I could only get in for 1 hour session, I would drive an hour and a half home, shadow an hour session, talk to the guys as much as I could, and then I would drive back. And it just, I would say that I was so concerned about like how I would ever make my living or do whatever. Like I would ask these guys so many questions and like I would like interrogate them constantly to try to figure out what I could do, to the point where I think these dudes are like, dude, just get away from us, because I was just like, I just felt like I needed to know, I felt like, I felt a sense of, just like, it was a sense of excitement and passion for it, but also just like fear. I was like, yo, man, I need to learn as much as I can as quickly as possible so that I can like swim. And, so I would always go down, I would sink that time and thinking like, all right, like I'm going to have 2 years experience, 2 years advantage before all these other kids who are just smarter than me, kids that are getting A's in biology when I'm sitting there just like sweating it out, trying to pass the class. So it's, those are things I try to do. And then I took that knowledge and I brought that back to Gettysburg, and I brought the training and the philosophy and all the stuff to our team, because everything was just super outdated. Everything was machine based, where you're just hopping on a leg extension and a leg curl and these types of things. And I'm like, no, man, this isn't how athletes train. This isn't how we move. And I know based on how I train myself, how my body reacted and felt the best. And so I'm just like, you guys are doing this because you read it in a book or in a magazine or somebody handed it down to you over 20 years. But like, that's not what's going to make elite performance.
Got you. So talk about kind of like how you got started, as far as, like as your own business. Do you have like an intro session with each player? Kind of talk about what goes into that and how that the beginnings with an athlete kind of starts now.
Yeah, the beginning with an athlete is I have them send me as much information as I can, name, where do they play, what position, what are the things that they need to work on, strengths, weaknesses, and then ask for film. Because I like to see I thrive when I work with guys who have healthy self-analysis. There's a lot of like delusional parents and kids. I like to ask the parents too, if they're involved, what they think their kids' strengths and weaknesses are separately. I like to get the information from them separately, because sometimes you'll see the kid is like spot on with what they want, but like the parent has like some delusion of like what their kid should be. Or sometimes it's in reverse, where the parent is more accurate and the kid is completely delusional about where. But it's like the best stuff is when you have a parent and kid who are both like, they're never on the complete same page, but both pretty accurate, and pretty credible with their response. And it matches to what you see in the film. And it's like, okay, these are the guys I'm going to get the best results out of, because they're like in a healthy mindset. a lot of guys are like, hey, I want to be this. And I'm like, you will never be that. Like, and even if you want to be that right now, the next level will never ask you to be that. And the level after that is definitely not going to want you to be that. So, so that's kind of what I do with it. And then if I feel like based on answers, film, things like that, that I see enough to where, hey, let's come in and get you in for your first workout. Then after that first workout, I'm just very honest. I tell people, hey, because you come here and train with me doesn't mean I'm going to continue to train you. I'm not in here for like trying to just accumulate as much revenue and money as possible. It's going to be a matter of, I don't want to dilute the guys that I have in here. The groups I have in here are incredibly talented. I have about 20 kids that I see Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now. 19 of them will go on and be able to make a living playing the game of basketball if they continue to pour their time, energy, and resources into it. And so I can't just put like a regular dude in there that doesn't have a vision for the next level. That's not to say a Division III kid or Division III trajectory kid can't join that group. They can, but you need to come in here. You need to be a dog. You need to bring something of value that's going to elevate the group. And if you can't bring that, if your intention is like, hey, a decade from now, I want to have like some photo op to show my kids like, oh, I used to work out with these guys. This isn't the place, man. And I'm not the guy. It's not that kind of thing. This is like survive and advance environment. And if like you're not about that and it doesn't mean that much to you, then I can't put you around these kids. Because I got guys here where like it's going to change your entire trajectory of their life based on what they can do with this game, the doors that can knock down for them in and out of basketball. And I can't put it down here because it's a fun after school extracurricular activity for you. I'm sorry, there's a place for that. It's just not here or me.
I feel that. So talk about like some indicators that you're able to see, outside of work ethic, because I feel like that's the easy one. What's like an indicator that you see in a kid that kind of shows that he'll be successful in the future?
So it can be like one of the things for me is just honestly about their game. How correlated it is between what their perception of their game is and what it looks like on film. Or even sometimes it's their body. Maybe it's not in their game. Sometimes I'm talking to them about, hey, express to me positions on the court where you feel like physically you're like out of whack, whether that be your balance or a specific instance where you're going to the basket with strength or not having leverage in certain situations defensively. But like if a kid can start to like articulate, usually all guys are slow at first. And the reason they're slow to respond is because like nobody asks them these questions ever. Like ever. Trainers are just like, oh yeah, man, come in, like let's work out. Then they have no program and they're just like putting them through a workout. The kid's like, oh, that's good work today, but it's not good work because it's not a program and you don't know where their strengths and weaknesses are and what they need to get better at. Like I like to talk to my guys about specific situations every single day, literally every single day. KJ Evans comes in, Jarris Walker comes in. First thing I say to him is like, hey man, you hooped yesterday. What did it feel like? Name anything, any situation, any environment where things felt funny to you. Hey, any spot where you're like, that was a little uncomfortable or it didn't feel crisp, because we want to adjust that through our program we do with our strength and conditioning. It's just so I'll ask guys that. And as we go along, if we get deeper into the conversation, they still can't articulate it. That's a red flag. If they can be articulate about it and start to say, hey, this, and this, then I know they're thinking about the game. Then I know that it's not just they're going out and playing and then hitting a reset, working with a blank slate again the next day. I know that they've taken information and stimulus from the games that they play, thought about it, and we're like, okay, I'm going to bring this to Kyle. Or just as a player, if we've never worked together, that they're thinking about that. And so I know that's a kid that's hungry to get better, an athlete, competitor that's hungry to get better. And I can help those guys.
Yeah. So most of the time in an individualized training session or even in a group one, you're kind of looking at either a strength that they have or a weakness that they have. Sometimes it's a combination of both, but it kind of sounds like you like really, it's not a shotgun approach. You kind of really want to specialize, one or two or maximum three things that the kid wants to work on. Talk about kind of that process for you and why you like doing it that way.
Yeah. So on the strength side, on strength and conditioning side, there are, certain like core components I really try to focus on with our guys. Basketball is a little bit different. I don't feel like there's a lot of strength coaches that get so into the strength side of strength and conditioning in basketball when, to be honest, that's just not how the game is and not how the game is played. You train a kid like a football kid, and in basketball, you get strong to the point where it's not an advantage for you anymore. I would actually argue that most guys that are just absolute tanks just stop getting calls because people are like, oh, he's so physically superior that he can handle that. I mean, when you look back and you watch Shaq film, that dude was getting absolutely assaulted all the time, and they just wouldn't call fouls because it's like they don't reward you for just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Like they don't. And like the way the game is played and the way you run the pounding, it's going to take a toll on you over time anyway. So it's finding that combination of like movement, strength, but like really locking into the things that are huge problem areas for basketball guys. Ankle mobility, like core stability, balance, like all these things that are going to give them longevity, teaching them how to land, teaching them how to jump properly, take off properly. There's just so much stuff like that that's key. So like those are common things that we'll work on with all my basketball guys. You know, for instance, I have a kid, Dre Perry from Temple right now. He started training with me this offseason. Was like, hey, I feel really stiff, like these types of things. His body, and he was like, his feet weren't moving as well. Like not the Dre I knew from Poly in high school, who was just freak athlete, super explosive. And so our big emphasis on him is like, I don't need to get you stronger. You're 6'5", 230 pounds in a freight train. Like Dre looks like he would be a 10-time all-pro middle linebacker. So I was just like, our biggest thing with him was like, get his foot speed up, get his mobility back, focus on his ankles, you know, make sure that he's getting his ankle health, his ankle mobility back to where he can really move, because he wasn't moving as well as he used to. And it was just like, you don't need to get any stronger, any bigger. You haven't lost the strength battle a single time in college, and you won't lose one ever again if I never have you touch a weight. So it was about getting him to where he moves better again. Then you got a guy like KJ Evans, where it's like, okay, you're 6'8", like 107 pounds. So, you know, we're gonna have you go and do a bunch of strength stuff, continue to get stronger. Now, he's not gonna fill out tomorrow or in the next year, but just giving him like all the core stabilization, the strength, core lifts, things like that to continue to get him stronger, where as he starts to fill out, he's gonna have that foundation set for him. So
just a side note real quick. Sorry, I know like with basketball players, a lot of the time they're, you know, really tall, long, skinny. At least in your experience, do you kind of start with more core workout and body weight exercises with those kids to build the muscle, or do you go to weight training most of the time? Or
so I don't do a ton, unless they're like college guys. I don't do like a ton of spinal loading, like stuff where I have the bar up on their back, so like a back squat or things like that with them, until they start to build like a baseline of strength, and until they're starting to show like core stability, stuff like that. So our first like several workouts when you come in, usually months of workouts with high school guys, are like hammering their balance, how strong are their legs. There's a lot of different ways to train certain body weight things, which are wicked, that guys are not very good at. And there's super high intensity stuff. I think a lot of people think body weight and all they think about is like lunges and things like that. Like the body weight stuff that we do, I have my pro athletes do body weight stuff. We do it every day. You know, like Jimmy Smith off the Ravens was in here for an hour and a half this morning. We might have touched weights for 12 minutes of an hour and a half workout. The rest was like, hey, how is he moving? Like really tapping into his core strength and, you know, doing body weight exercises. And he was destroyed when he left here. And he's also considered probably the strongest defensive back in the NFL. So, you know what I mean? In terms of like, that guy hasn't lost the strength battle in 10 years and the most ruthless game on the planet.
Yeah. Talk about real quick about injury prevention and, you know, how that's incorporated into scouts, or if that's just kind of like something that you tell your guys to do on their own time.
No, so injury prevention, that like, but when my guys walk in here, the first 15 minutes they do, like I'm a big believer in like habit. I think you got trainers now, they're like, oh, constant shock. And I don't even know what the hell that means, because like the greatest people in anything, in business, if you look at the most elite athletes in the world, LeBron's, Tom Brady's, all these guys that have had incredible success, Kobe, Jordan, their lives are built on habit. Like their workout times, the way they eat, it's like no different than them breathing. It's like thoughtless at this point because they've done it over and over and over and over again. It's like the only thing that disrupts them is if their habit gets disrupted, at which point they're just like, what in the hell? And they figure out, you know, how to get back on track as quickly as possible. So same thing in here. When my guys come in, there's 15 minutes built out on the front end of every workout, where now they come in, they like grab their band, they go through all their glute activation, they go through the ankle mobility, their ankle stabilization stuff. And it's like that part, like that's like your admission fee every single day to start your workout is your injury prevention. Hey, do all this stuff so that you're prepped for your work, but also we've done everything to make sure that your ankles are healthy, your hips are healthy, your body's functioning properly before we go into a workout. And that's just, I mean, that's every single day. Like our kids walk in, like it's almost like zombie, like just like, you know what I mean? They're like, boom, bands here, tissue work. It's just like every single time we go through that.
Gotcha.
So big believer in that, especially with basketball, man. You got to do it. Guys, like, because those shoes they wear all the time, and then as soon as they finish hooping, they always put their sandals on. Even worse, these dudes wear Crocs now. You know, it's just all these problems with their feet and ankles, and you got to address those. If you're not, you're doing a disservice to the kids, and they're going to end up getting hurt. And your program is going to be, you know, largely at fault for that.
Gotcha. 3 more questions on training. The first one's like, what's a conditioning drill or basketball drill that you've stolen from someone else that's really effective in what you do?
So the drills that I steal, that I would say that I have stolen over the years, are always like rooted in the most fundamental things. I'm like a big fundamental guy. I think if you watch in like NBA game, I think what you'll realize is very few guys can be ball dominant and dribble more than once. I mean, you even look at like Klay Thompson's efficiency, like the guy barely dribbles and scores all the time. So like what I believe in and the things that I steal are generally, it's never like the, you know, like keeping 4 balls bouncing at once, or like, you know, a ton of 2-ball dribbling stuff. The things I generally steal, like, hey, that was a very simple way. The guys who can simplify the game through their drills as much as possible are the guys that I think are brilliant. And so like, there's a guy down in, you know, I can tell you, there's actually, I can tell you the guys exactly who I have stolen from over the years. So one is Ronnie Taylor. He's down in Miami. Great dude, but just like finishes around the rim, where he'll start his workouts where it's kind of like, you know, people will start with the old school mic and drill. Not that, but he'll start at like an elbow, and he'll just go where you're like crossing down the lane. So starting at the left elbow, crossing down the right side of the lane. And he'll start where it's just like, oh, you got to make like 3 running hooks coming up right hand. All right. Now, like, you got to do the same thing. You got to do 3 running hooks taking off your opposite foot. Now you got to do like 3 Euro step floaters, and you're all working that left elbow. So you'll get through like 7 different finish variations to start your workout, where it's all kind of like half speed. And then you'll end up taking that and you'll work it off in the left elbow. So like before the workout really even starts, you know, now you've gotten like 30, 40, 50 finish stuff, you know, inside finishes, working all sorts of things inside, outside of your body, floaters, things like that. And I'm just like, you know, it's a brilliant way to start your workout. A lot of people, they get so into like the shots, the step back, pump fake, like just all this crazy shit. And they never actually take the time to go over the fundamental stuff, which is like, hey man, can you finish outside your body in the lane? No? Cool. You're not going to be very good. Like, so that's a guy that's great. One of the guys I'd say is really well known that I've taken a couple things from over time is Drew Hanlon. He's brilliant. You know, pure sweat basketball. One of the things I've taken from him is hip swivel. So I'm a big guy in like step through to meet pressure, beat pressure, all those sorts of things. But he does some stuff that's pretty dynamic in terms of putting your dribble down with a step through, in terms of getting your hips back around to attack downhill. So his hip swivel teachings he does out of a step through. I think that stuff is really, really, really good. I have no shame in saying I've stolen that directly from him. And then last guy I'd say is there's a guy, Andre Battle, out in Chicago, who some different ball handling drills he's done out there. He's actually the only guy that I've ever supported a 2-ball ball handling drills from. So if you ever see any video footage, anything like that of me ever doing 2-ball ball handling stuff, that is all stolen directly from Andre Battle. He's the only guy where I've ever been like, yeah, man, I think that stuff makes sense and I see a value in it.
Gotcha. So I guess the 2-ball stuff. What's a criticism that you grew from the most?
Just expecting other people to move the same way I move. You know, I think that's big in the basketball world. It's you know, not everything I do is the right way. I think sometimes you can get kind of like locked into your head of like your like what your dream or what your vision is, and you can kind of, I think it's human nature to like impose that on other people, or like kind of like, hey, the values they should live by or what they live by. And I don't think I don't think I have the holy grail of values or anything like that. I think I'm actually like a super weird dude. But you know, it's sometimes when people or people in your circle or people even not in your circle, and they do certain things. And I would say I like for most of my life, I would say I was pretty harsh on relationships. You know, just in general, when I felt like they moved in a way that was different than the way I felt like it should be done. And I think in the past, like 2 to 3 years specifically, I've learned how to just adjust and figure out, okay, that's not in alignment with the way I feel, and have a discussion about it. and just try to understand why that person thinks the way that they think. And that's done a lot for me in the training world. Like I would say 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had the mindset to do that with a kid. And now, like a kid, I can kind of see like we have a disagreement on something, and I try to talk through to figure out why they're in that thing. And a lot of times what I've realized is like, whether that kid's a high school, college, or it could even be a pro, I'm like, those dudes are brilliant. Like they do things at a very high level. They're successful at a very high level doing certain things. And like when they can explain it to me and articulate it, we have a dialogue about it. Sometimes they come back and I'm like, hey, Dan, no, Kyle, the way you're talking about it feels way better. That's way cleaner. Or, hey, I shouldn't have done that. And other times I'm like, damn, man, like I really understand your point of view right now. I was just kind of thinking of it from like a very narrow vision. And after you explained it, and it's just, it's helped me to grow a lot professionally. And personally as well, and hold a lot less kind of like grudges. I would say earlier in my life, I was super sharp with stuff where I was like, if somebody did act, it wasn't even just like, hey, I don't like it. It was like, boom, you're cut, move on, and just kept everything super tight. And it's like now I'm better at like, hey, yeah, they don't move exactly the way I'm moving these things, but they do so many other things I really appreciate, as a person or competitor or client that, I want to keep them around and see value there. And so
last one, as far as criticism and motivating your athletes goes, can you talk about kind of your approach to that, and maybe how that's evolved over time, and let's talk about that.
I think that the number one thing that people overlook when they try to motivate their athletes, coaches, trainers, parents, anything like that, is people speak they speak from what they want too much. I think dads will speak for what they want for their kid, but they're never like talking actually to their kid about, it's not based on the kid's beliefs or the kid's intentions or the kid's vision. It's based on their own. And so, when like I start to train guys, I get to know them, I'll ask them questions to start to paint a picture for me of like what matters to them. And so like, I'll give you a specific example. This is maybe 7 years ago. I'm training a group of pro athletes in Ray Rice's pool. And so, I'm going through the different athletes in the pool and I'm asking them, what motivates them? Why do they play the game, right? While they're going through pool conditioning. So all these dudes are like dying and like running in the pool and doing all this stuff. And so the guys in the pool is like Ray Rice is in there, Ben Grubbs, Torrey Smith, Jimmy Smith, Darius Webb. It was crazy. It was like 8 guys in there. They're all just studs. They're all in CJ Fair from Syracuse. It was a cool group. And we're going. And so, I asked Ray, I was like, hey, Ray, what do you play for? And he's like, man, obviously this isn't how we will be remembered now. But he was like, I want to be remembered as one of the most dynamic running backs to ever play the game. I want people to think about, Marshall Faulk, Ray Rice. I want them to think about me in that category. When I want people to just be like, hey, man, that was one of the most dynamic guys to ever play. And I was like, all right, yeah, so we go. So like in my head, I know I'm going to use this for the future. I'll get to that in a second. So then I asked Jimmy Smith. I'm like, yo, Jimmy. I'm like, what's in it for you, man? Like, how do you want to be remembered? He goes, what? He goes, man, I don't give a fuck how I'm remembered. He's like, I'm trying to get paid, right? So, but it's great, right? Each in their own respect. It's great because like we go into their workout, next week we're into training, Ray shows up to his workout late, right? One of the days. And I was like, hey, Ray, don't even trip, man. It's all right. And I was like, I heard Adrian Peterson shows up late to all his workouts late. So it's all good. I mean, he doesn't really work that hard. They write articles about it, but I'm sure it's all flowing. I'm sure he shows up 17 minutes late. So it's now good, man. I'm sure they'll remember you. You're going to have a great legacy, man. So like the rest of the workout, he would just be going so hard. Rest of the week, he'd be on time. But it's like, I was speaking to what mattered to him, not to me. You know what I mean? That like mattered to him. So it's like painting a picture for him where it's like, that's how I get him to like lock in and be in the mental, space I need him to be in. With Jimmy, it's like we'd be going through an agility drill and like a lot of times I'll incorporate ball, things like that. So I like throw a ball to Jimmy coming out of agility drill. He would drop it and he kind of shrug it off. And I'd be like, oh man, like that was a $750,000 drop. I'd be like, if you feel good about it, I feel good about it. $750,000 drop. I mean, it's not a big deal, man. I'm sure you can live with it because money doesn't mean that much to you. I was like, but for most people, that $750,000 drop might feel kind of bad. But let's go ahead, next rep, man. Just shrug it off. It doesn't mean anything. So then he would be totally locked in. But I would say that my criticisms or critical feedback with my guys is always rooted in the things that I know that matter to them. It is very rarely there will be times when it is rooted in what matters to me. But I would say the majority of the time, the reason I get the responses I get, the results I get, is because the feedback that I give my guys is rooted in what matters to them. And then they want to go hard because you're speaking their language, you're speaking what matters to them, and then it's like reminding them of why they're doing what they're doing.
Gotcha. And just talk really quick about the importance of motivating, kind of supporting your guys too when they're going through a difficult time, or maybe a story that you have where a guy was just lacking in confidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big reason. My guys continue to train me over the years. So like the longevity of guys I train is wild. Like a lot of the guys I train, they don't like. It's not like they're like here with me on a Wednesday, somewhere else on a Tuesday, somewhere else on a Wednesday, somewhere else on a Thursday. Like my guys lock in with me where it's like bang, 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 and they want to be there. And a lot of that is because of like that unconditional support and things like that. I would say, I mean, there's a ton of them. There's so many instances over the years. The most glaring one I could ever say is, when Ray went through his domestic violence incident, and I think a lot of people switched up on him when that happened. And like just the way I was raised is very different to that. I was pretty outspoken publicly about my continued support of Ray and his family, and that caused some backlash around here. And I frankly didn't care because, I felt like people in the community, even the NFL, the Ravens, people who were businesses who had endorsements with him, it's just like I felt like the second that he didn't fit their convenient box, everyone like ran for the hills because it's a money game, and everyone is just like, oh man, I'm out of here. And it's just like all these same people who I'd seen talk about family, 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 family. And then it's the second that you do something that's a blemish, right, or a black eye, and everyone runs. And I just know, like, the way I was raised and how I grew up, like, I did a lot of stuff many times to, like, humiliate my family, you know what I mean, or, like, embarrass my dad. But his response never once was like, you're not a part of the family anymore. His response was like, come over here, and brought me closer, right? And so, like, I never believed in a family situation, no matter how bad something was, where my response to that would be like, oh, hey, man, now it's inconvenient for you to be family. And so, like, when Ray went through that, I continued to train him, continued to just try to make sure every day we were, like, talking about positive things and building, because when you go from the most beloved person probably in sports history in your community, doing more stuff for your community than any guy had really ever done, to hated globally overnight, that's a pretty big fall. And it was amazing, man, because I remember the day that they ruled, when the video came out, and it was instant. Like, obviously his career was going to be fried at that point. I told Ray I was going to come over that night, and I expected, it was all the time. People couldn't wait to be over at his house, and all these people would be over there and all these types of things. And so after work, I was like, I got to get over there. I know there's going to be like 100 people over there, but I just got to get over there and just say what's up to him and talk to him a little bit and just let him know, I'm here if he needs me. And the devastating part about that is I went over to his house after I finished work at Sweat. I got over his house like 8 o'clock at night. There were like 10 cars outside. I was like, yeah, I knew there was going to be a bunch of people over here. And when I got inside, it was Janae and 10 players' wives sitting on the sofa in the TV room. And Ray was sitting by himself at his kitchen table with his just head in his hands. And so it was just like a testament to me of like, when everything's going well, there are never too many people who can get in your corner, who are supporting you, who are your family, who love you, who are your friends. But when everything goes south, when it's not convenient to be your friend anymore, who's there? Because the least convenient time in history to be in that dude's circle, no one was there, right? And so I showed up, and 5 minutes later, one of his longtime friends who trains with me at Sweat, Courtney Green, he showed up too, and it was me, Courtney, Ray on the worst day of his entire life. Right. And so, like, after that, I continued to bring him to Sweat. I was making him work out, sometimes one-on-one. Sometimes I was making him work out in our adult groups just so we continued to have social interaction, because our people here were always so appreciative. He'd always been so good with their kids, had always taken so much time to do stuff that there was actually an article put out at one point where he had credited, myself and Sweat for, like, really just, like, saving his life. And so, like, I would say that's the most extreme situation of, like, when things get thick or things like that, or things are really bad for my guys. Like, I just don't shy away from that. I would have been embarrassed if, like, one day we all gotta hit the dirt, man. If I'm sitting there and I'm like, damn, like when things got tough for my guy, I just like ran out and disappeared. I don't know. I don't believe in that life.
Yeah, I mean, and I think people misunderstand, the fact that you're still there to support him doesn't mean that you support that you did,
Yeah,
and that's something that really is costly.
no doubt.
So moving on to East Coast bump, this past year, St. Francis beat Oak Hill by 19, up on them pretty much the whole game from what I heard. And Poly ended up beating IMG by 2 with Raheem's layup, at the buzzer. Well, not at the buzzer, but last couple seconds. And that was kind of a coming out party for Brandon Murray. To talk about the importance of those games for the area and kind of what it meant to you and what it meant to the area.
Yeah, I mean, like that was one of the coolest nights of my life personally. But I think for our city just to have a game where I created that game, not a lot of why I created the game was stuff that I'd seen wrong. And I just, I don't know that I ever had an intention of like running an event, but I'd just seen events where I felt like they weren't run well, where people really hadn't taken care of the teams. It hadn't really had a community cause. It was always a money grab. It was guys that weren't even really in the basketball community that I was seeing run them. They were kind of just like coming in and clearly there for the money, would like, I don't know, wear really expensive clothes to like the meetings with coaches and stuff. And I'm just like, you're not a basketball guy. You don't care about the basketball game. You sure as hell don't care about the kids. And then I'd always see them just like, try to like butter up the best players from each team. And I was just like, everything about it just like rubbed me the wrong way and smelled funny. And so my whole reason for wanting to run the game was really rooted in just wanting to do something where it was great for the community. The fans had a great experience. The kids felt like they were on a huge stage, that some of those kids who maybe weren't going to get the chance to ever play high-level college or play college at all were going to feel like they were a part of something really important and special and like and historic. And I feel like every kid deserves an opportunity to have something like that. And I know that they would cherish that stuff. And so that was the goal when we went out. And, the way I marketed the game, if you look at it, was never really based around stud players. I did very, very little content about East Baldwin or Justin Lewis, who would have been very easy to market the game around because they were the two big names in here. I don't think I put up anything about Ace, actually. Maybe one thing about Justin. Instead I was marketing the whole game around the guys that I didn't feel like were getting the exposure that they deserved. And I feel like our community and our basketball community really rallied around that because everybody's so quick to focus on making the money, right? Or like generating this money, that they're trying to focus the things around the kids that they think will generate the money versus like focusing the energy around the kids who like deserve it and earn it, who haven't gotten an opportunity yet. Like at this point, Ace is going to VCU. Justin's going to Marquette. I don't need to let you know about Justin and Ace. Everybody knows Justin and Ace are going to be there. That's cool. If I need to announce to you that Justin Lewis and Ace are playing in this game, then like, you know what I mean? Then you shouldn't be at the game. I'd really just wanted to do those things where it was like trying to feature guys, do it a little differently, run the game at a super nice venue, have a ton of security there so any type of person can go. It was really important to me to have a diverse demographic. Baltimore is one of the most like racially divided cities I've ever been in, and I travel a ton. Maybe Chicago. Chicago's not great with that either. But I just like, I have friends. Like I deal in all different types of communities. Like I have friends in all different types of communities. I wanted everyone to feel like they could go there and be safe. I feel like so few places do that, whether it's restaurants, venues, things like that. I want everyone to go and be like, man, like everyone can go out here, enjoy high level basketball, be entertained, be taken care of, feel like they were taken care of as a fan, feel like the kids had a great experience, know that the schools were taken care of, know that there was a community tie. Because it just doesn't happen. Like it definitely doesn't happen in this city. So
yeah, gotcha. So talk to me about how, so I'm from upstate New York, and there was, I can't remember what it was. It was, we were talking about one of the players from Poly or St. Francis or one of the teams. And I was like, yeah, the DMV is stacked. And they're like, whoa, Baltimore is not the DMV. So kind of talk about how, and I think that that's something that Baltimore also feels. And they're like, nah, that's y'all thing. Y'all can have that. And it's kind of like a little brother mentality. So kind of talk about that relationship between Baltimore and the rest of the DMV, specifically Baltimore and DC, because that there is a pretty big rivalry, even though some of these kids grew up together and played together.
Yeah, I mean, I would, there's no doubt that there's a rivalry between between Baltimore and DMV. I think anyone who said otherwise would be lying about it. That's not really like, I would say so much on, that's not where I would say my energy goes. My energy is on getting our kids the hell out of Baltimore, making sure they have great resources. I would say that a lot of the success, a lot of the success stories in Baltimore, whether they ever became that or did not and should have been successful, were not like, it wasn't a product of not having the talent. It was a product of like bad dudes infiltrating circles and getting in with kids. And I know like, DC has those issues as well. But it's like the talent here, that's really why, I try to spend so much time here, is because I know like what Baltimore is about to do if it has the right resources and right people dealing with some of these kids. And it's become an everyday battle trying to cut out some of the fat, some of the toxic people, and some of the people who are trying to monetize kids. But I would just say, like, for me, Baltimore versus like you talking DC, PG, I mean, in terms of like long-term success, like they've had more success. I would say the PG, and I'd say PG DC has had more success at the highest level in terms of like more success stories getting to the highest level. I think that like statistically that's a fact. I mean, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like, but I think the solution to that, like the difference there isn't talent. The difference there is like building out the right resources and infrastructure. And that's why I'm at Poly. That's why I deal so much with, Sam Brand and Anthony Fitzgerald. I started to do a lot with Mookie Dobbins, who, he runs Team Thrill up here, because those are guys who are doing the right things, building things the right way, being really healthy. It just so happens we have a lot of grown men. And again, not to say DC does not, but we have, I would say, a lot of grown men who have gotten over the years kind of like a stranglehold at a young age with some of these kids. And it's been like, we've been loosening that up, and people don't like that very much here. But when we as we continue to take that over, the amount of success I think Baltimore has over the next 10 years is going to crush anything it's had previously. Because now we got the right people building the right things, the right kids, the families are seeing that things are different here. And, and it's also going to prevent Baltimore kids from going down to DC to do stuff like AAU, because they're going to be like, oh, this is better than anything down there. This is better than anything anywhere. And actually, the best thing is right here, right now, and it's right down the street. And when that happens, things are going to boom. But as far as historically, I mean, I think anyone who would really say that Baltimore's production of high-level talent is superior to DC's, I just think that's fraudulent as hell. I just don't think that you're speaking clearly. I think you're speaking out of pride and not actual, historical fact.
Yep. I heard a quote from you where you said you don't grow through success, you grow through failure. Talk about, the competitiveness that you have and that you want in the kids that you work with, and kind of wanting the smoke versus a controlled environment that, doesn't expose your weaknesses. You don't play, you're not trying to play against ranked, other ranked players or other ranked teams. You kind of just want to play the fluff and boost your stats. You know what I'm saying? Because I think that there's a lot of that occurs. So, kind of talk about it's kind of an old school approach of, wanting the smoke.
Yeah, I mean, you have guys out here now with this whole like social media kick, all this sort of stuff, where it's like, hey, like one kid gets like fried in a pickup game or fried in a workout, and like, then people get upset that the video's out. Then they want that person to take the video down, and it's just like, well, like, what are you talking about? Like, the real solution is not to take a video down. It's to, teach your buddy or your son or your player to play defense. If they play defense and they learn how to play hard, compete hard, they're not going to be on there getting fried for 2 straight hours, So it's like, I'm a big believer in, that's also going to build your threshold. Like, you protect somebody now, they're sooner or later when the lights are on and everybody's watching, and that person is going to fail. And if they're not if they haven't built up a threshold and a tolerance for what failure feels like, how to deal with it, how to navigate it, they are going to crumble. And then they're going to crumble when there's more eyes on them than ever, which is like the best thing to do at a younger age is like expose them to as much failure as possible, as to where they build up a tolerance for it, as to where like eventually you're going to be so focused on winning and also understand the pain and frustration of losing and failing, that you're just going to be relentless in like your approach and how you compete, trying to do everything it takes to win. But like the amount of parents like with high level kids and things like that who just try to like expose them only to the environments where they feel like they're where they feel like they'll have the path of least resistance, where they'll start as a freshman in high school, where like it's just like you're like that's a death wish on that kid's career. Like a death wish on that kid's career. You know, look at our you know, most successful athletes at the highest level. Like none of those guys came through. Like you're thinking off top, like reference them again. You talk about Jordan, well documented his failures early on and throughout his career and how that drove him. You look at Tom Brady, like that man didn't even like play at Michigan until he was a senior, ends up being whatever he was, a 6th round pick. You know, his failures are well documented. You talk about LeBron, like LeBron was obviously a stud when he was young, but he went through so much. Like people forget all the trauma and stuff he was going through young in his career, the pressure he was on when he was like losing, and you could just tell like emotionally and mentally, it was like he was very, very disrupted, and you know, probably his beliefs and values were challenged a lot early in his career. Completely different human than he is now. But that's because he experienced a lot of his failure later on, but like he still went through it. And the reason he is such an incredible force now is because he went through that and he fought through it and got through it. But the level of protection that these guys try to do with their kids, I mean, it's embarrassing, man. It's like, I mean, it's just like, it's like trying to keep your kid from falling on the ground or getting a bruise or like things like that. Like, man, they're never going to understand what true adversity is. They're not going to understand what pain is. They're not going to understand this is something you play through, whereas this is an actual injury. You're not like, it's just their whole perception of like, you know, reality is going to be completely distorted. And then how do you expect that kid or that person to ever be successful? Not just in like scrap basketball. Like in real life, at some point, man, as a father or a coach, like you're not going to be around. You're going to be in the dirt, and that dude's going to have to survive on their own. And what they're going to survive and wait for the next person to roll out the red carpet and make sure that like they never get touched and they never face adversity. That's just not going to happen. That dude might as well die with you. Like failure is a part of the game, man. I mean, you talk to anybody successful in business, sports, they're never going to talk about how success made them successful or how their successes made them more successful. Everybody's like, man, I hit this rock bottom, or I failed, couldn't figure it out. I failed 30 different times. You know, I almost went bankrupt. I went bankrupt twice. And then I built this $100 million business or $10 million business. Or, you know, it's guys where it's like, at some point, you're going to hit your rock bottom in your life. Everybody will. And it's like, okay, boom, like, how are you going to rebound? How are you going to navigate that? And if you don't have a tolerance for that, you're not going to rebound from it. You're going to stay there, or you're going to drop off completely, and it's, you know, lights out.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's kind of, I mean, it's very typical coach speak to talk about adversity and to talk about work ethic. But I think, you know, a lot of people don't talk about that resolve to bounce back. I mean, people talk about Jordan's game-winning shots, the famous poster that he's missed 26 game-winning shots. And, you know, he's failed over and over again in his life, and that's why he succeeds. And I think that's a really underrated aspect. 2 last questions. What are kind of your methods for reining in players who, you know, aren't particularly locked into the workout? Maybe they're not listening. Maybe they kind of have a superstar mentality. You know, that's something that you just, you know, I know Coach Brand is kind of big on, you know, running them to death. You know, if you know, if there's stuff going on academically that they need to talk about.
Yeah. So as far as here, I would say, I have a great situation now. So the level of which I have to reel a guy back in is very good. Like I've shut down a lot of guys who are high level guys to come here. Like by the same notion I was talking earlier about not letting in kids that really are kind of in it for fun, or, you know, maybe don't want to have aspirations to play in college. That doesn't change because you're talented. I'm not going to bring you in here because you're a highly talented guy. If you're a highly talented guy who has a lot of baggage, I don't want you here either. So, like, there are guys who get paid to play the game who I don't want here, who I've not allowed here, or I've told, hey, it's not a good fit, because I can't have you around these guys either. Like, the relationships with these kids is way bigger. So I would say the degree to which I reel in what's different here is, like, I have elite kids who are very high character guys. And if you came here and you weren't a high character guy and you were super talented, you'd probably not want to come here anymore, because the other guys wouldn't be messing with you. They would just be like, no, man, like, we don't do that. That's not how we work. That's not how we approach it. So, like, there are times when guys come in and they might come in a little bit late, or or I can see like early on that they're not as locked in as normal. And so like, this is something I have not really been able to change with myself. When I see that happen, I like, this happened yesterday, actually. I kind of felt everybody, and our whole plan changed because I saw the way people were moving, and I felt like people were trying to slow roll me on a Monday morning. And so I immediately went to the opposite side of the spectrum. I was like, okay, now we're going to move. Bang, 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 bang. We were doing this, started talking fast, moving them fast. Like, I just brought my energy so far up where I was like, hey, this is the way we're going to do it. Either you're going to tap out and leave, or like, we're going to work like this. And everybody just like raised their level. But I would say that I go opposite side of the spectrum with the group. And because the group collectively is like so driven and motivated and talented, like it's always the majority of the group who now will rally around that. Now, it didn't always used to be that way. So like, back when I would tell a guy wasn't reeled in, or when a guy wasn't totally locked in, that's what I would say, reference before. Whereas just based on our conversations with him specifically, I would start talking to him about the things that matter to him and remind him like, hey, why we're doing it, why we're there, what we need to be doing, how maybe this has been a problem in the past, and how we had a conversation about how we were going to try to correct it, and remind him that, hey, right now is one of those times that we said we were going to avoid, going forward. Like, you and I sat in my office together, one-on-one, spoke to each other like men, and you told me that, hey, this is a problem I need to get better at. And I'm telling you right now is a time, an opportunity for you to get better. And if you do not have that opportunity, you're going to get worse. And if you take it, we're going to get better. But, like, if you do say no and you don't want to do it, that's cool. I probably just don't want to work with you anymore. Like, it's just like.
What sets Coach Brand and Polly apart, and what have you learned from him in your time there? And then also attached to that, talk about, as your role as a trainer for them and for your own business, kind of your role in their recruitment as far as reaching out to coaches or fielding coaches' questions.
The difference with just being with Polly and Coach Sam is that guy just pours his life into those kids, man. I mean, there's a lot of coaches who like to glorify their wins or their record and all these sorts of things. And that's why they're doing it. At the end of the day, they want to feel like they did this or had these accomplishments they can share, kind of put their chest out about. And then just like, none of those things are relevant to Sam. Like, Sam wants to win. Sam is, hyper competitive. Don't get me wrong about that. But, when you talk to him about the success of Polly's program, what he talks about, he's going to talk about guys who, came from really like high adversity backgrounds and went on to, certain professional careers in their life where they're doing things that, first person in their family to graduate college, first person in their family to go and start their own business, do their own thing. Like, he'll go on and on about stories, kids who went on to go make, political impact in the world. And it's just like, those are the things, like, when you get him talking about those things, will go for hours and hours and hours, where he can just like talk on end about it. Like, that dude, my first season there, when I saw former players, not even former players, former students, and they came back to school, like that guy is so invested, not just in the kids he coaches, but the kids that are around those kids, the students at Poly. I mean, if you see Sam at a Poly basketball game, before the game or after the game, there will be about 100 people that will come up and like hug him, or they just came back in Baltimore for a day and they're like, Coach Sam, they'll like run across the court with like 5 minutes before the game goes to hug him. It's just like, it's just a completely different vibe. If you ever see him after school when like the final bell rings and he's getting out of teaching a math class, I mean, like regular students at Poly, all the Coach Sam, like just like dabbing him up, hugging him. I mean, the guy, like one of the biggest hearts I've ever been around in my entire life. Like, genuinely just wants to see kids be successful, wants to see, every kid get a fair crack and a fair opportunity, and is willing to sacrifice his own time, energy, resources, sometimes like happiness, to make sure that they get those things. And so, like, the second that I saw that, could feel that, watch him in action, like, there's no other place I want to be, man, because this is the stuff people preach, but they don't live by. This is the stuff people talk about, but they don't execute on, and he's out here doing it every day, sacrificing all these different things for everyone else. And this is the first time that it ever really made me, I always felt like I did that and had trouble finding other people who did that. And Sam is the first person I've ever been around where it's like, damn, man, like, Kyle, I think like you can do more. Like, you can do more, man. Like, that dude's doing more than you. And I can honestly say I don't think there's ever been another time in my life where I met someone who I felt like was more invested in these like individual kids and helping them them build out a better life for themselves until I met him. And I was like, yo, I got to get my shit together. So
he's that bouncing basketball for you.
What was that?
He's that bouncing basketball in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Last question. I really like the tweet that I saw from you. I believe it was yesterday. No, it was earlier this week. You said, if an athlete trains with me one time, I have no claim to their success. If an athlete trains with me 1,000 times, I still have no claim to their success. That is always the athlete's conclusion. Talk about that and, the importance of that to you and in your craft.
Yeah. So I think, for me, it's the athlete does the work. I can, there's obviously work involved in my end. I can build what I feel like is the blueprint, put the things together, things like that. But at the end of the day, that needle's never going to move without the athlete doing the work. That's the one part. They're the one coming in, sacrificing their time, coming in, putting in the energy, doing all that sort of thing. Like, the other part of that is it's just like people are so quick to like want to occupy credit for something. It's, you work with someone one time and now they're part of like your, like as a coach or trainer, they're part of your player list or part of your client list or like the person you're claiming you had impact on. And it's just like, that's not really your space to claim you had impact on another human being's life. Like, I feel like that would be weird for me to come up to you one day and just be like, hey man, I did this, this, and this for you, which made your life better. Like, if that's true, you would say that to me, you know what I mean? Or you would say that about me to someone else. But in this world, there's so many guys where it's like, as quickly as they possibly can, you want to get a picture with someone. As quickly as you possibly can, you want to get a video of them, even though maybe you really haven't had any impact in their life. Maybe they worked out with you once and they hated the workout and really didn't like you as a human being, right? But now it's like, you're talking about, that, oh, this is my guy, like my dude, like family or whatever. And it's like, let them say that. I think people are so quick to like try to carve out their place in someone else's success. It's just like an odd thing, KJ Evans, right? He's training with me right now. KJ, I truly believe will one day be an NBA lottery pick. Do I believe that KJ Evans never would have been an NBA lottery pick had he not met me? No. I believe he would have been an NBA lottery pick, no matter like kind of who he fell in the arms with. I feel like there's a lot of stuff I bring to him that can give him like little tweaks to make his career easier, create more longevity for him. I do a lot of stuff with him outside of basketball completely to make sure he can like navigate his circle and filter out potential problems. But, is his lifetime success, lifetime income based solely on the fact that he came in and worked with me? Listen, the dude is 6'8". He has a 7-foot wingspan. He has like very crisp feet. He's a super highly intellectual kid. He was raised the right way by his mom, who put in values in him where he's humble as hell and works super hard. Like, I had nothing to do with any of that. That dude came out of the womb with like built to play the game of basketball. It's like for me to claim any of that success, like if KJ ever feels like I have anything to do with that, like that's on him to bring up. But like, he was going to get there with me or without me. He's going to make 7+ figures playing the game of basketball with me or without me. Same thing, Jarris Walker, same deal. Who would I ever be to claim any level of success with that? Jimmy Smith, I've been working with him for 8 years. Jimmy might tell you, hey, I've had this impact on him. But, end of the day, he's a 6'3" DB who's 215 pounds, runs like a cheetah, moves really well, has a great knack. He's tremendous attention to detail. I didn't do those things for him. Like, he did those things when we met. I just helped him see things a little differently. Challenge him certain ways, and not just in here, but in his life, decisions he makes, and that will create the longevity, help to keep his mind fresh, everything like that, so that he can play the game as long as he wants to play, make the right decisions on and off the field, keep the right people around him, build out a healthy life for himself. But it's just, it's just like the job of a trainer or coach is to put your guys in position to have the lives that they want. It's not to like anoint yourself as like giving them the assist. And it's just like, I don't quite subscribe or understand like why or how like other men, women are just like so quick to just like carve out a part of someone else's success as their own. Like I'll be happy for those dudes when I'm happy for my guys when they get the opportunities that they work for, the opportunities they earned or build out the lives that they want. But I'm never like inside or outside, never like, yeah, man, like that was me. Like, that's me right there. It's just, I just don't understand that. I think it's a discredit to the amount of work and sacrifice those guys put in. I see my guys an hour and a half, 2 hours in a day, you know what I mean? Multiple days a week. They got 22 hours a day where they decide how great they want to be. If I train them 3 hours a day, they still got 21 other hours a day. Like, I don't care how much time you spend, man. There's a lot of other things that go into that. I think if you want to play that game, then they have hundreds of people in their life who can claim their success.
Yeah, there's a lot of them for sure. And last question, maybe three like underrated players in the area, or your like Twitter follows that most people don't know about, but they add a lot of value to what you do.
My three most underrated players in the area.
Sure.
Is that what? Okay. I'd say Kai at St. Francis, Kai Staten. I think that kid is an animal. I don't understand how you can drop 20 points on Oak Hill, be incredibly efficient, basically do like precision surgery on them for an entire game in front of 20 Division I coaches, and you leave that game without an offer. That's asinine to me with some of the kids that I see get offers, and this kid did that, and you could walk away genuinely and your heart feel good about not offering that dude. Just mind-blowing to me, like mind-blowing. I don't know, for the amount of like interest I've seen colleges give certain players, and to leave that game of that magnitude and watch a kid pick apart 10 plus Division I kids, I'm just like, okay, just you're thinking way too hard. He's a winner. Trey English, upcoming senior at Poly. We had Raheem Ali's going to Howard this past year. Trey will be the point guard this year. Trey, I mean, I've just seen what he's doing playing against super high level guys. Guys that are playing Big Ten basketball. Top college players in the country. Trey's an animal. He's unbelievably fast. He's 5'11", /6 feet. That stuff scares college coaches way more than it should, because then you'll recruit some 6'6" point guard who's trashed and soft and can't do anything, but he looks good on paper. And then Trey's gonna ruin their life. So I see what he can do. Guy gets just so many steals. He can get wherever he wants on the court. Finishes really well around the basket. He's developed a nice jumper. So I mean, like, I'll just feel so ashamed of our Baltimore-based schools, if they don't offer him, because like I know that he can help them all instantly. And I think that obviously our schools around here can get a bad rep not recruiting super well or aggressively in the area, considering the hotbed that it is. So he would be another guy that I would say with that. Both those guys are 2021s. Those are the top two that come to mind for me right now. I'd say one other one is Jalen Bryant and John Carroll. Their program isn't as strong as it was a couple years ago. I don't think he's getting the same looks. It's going to hurt him that they didn't have AAU this year. But Jalen makes stuff happen. He wins, scores, passes, does a lot of things really well. I don't think that his passing. Jalen Bryant.
Yeah, what year is he?
He's an upcoming 2021 as well, point guard. And he's kind of that Trey frame. He's sitting right around 6 feet. But I mean, again, make stuff happen, man. He's starting to get some interest from those low level D1 schools, and I think that dude's a winner. I don't think that he's able to show off what he can do from a dynamic passing ability the way he can, because that talent's not really there at John Carroll right now to do that. So a lot of the brunt is on him to kind of be a scoring point, whereas naturally he's kind of like, he can put the ball in the cup, but he's at his best basketball when he has other guys where he can do that, open up the floor for himself and his teammates. And, so he's another one. So I would say those three guys. Talk Jalen Bryant, Kai Staten, and Trey English.
Gotcha. And, I'm kind of out of questions, but, I'm going to give you the floor if you have a soapbox topic that you want to discuss, or an issue with parents or people in circle that you want to address, or – Any pro Baltimore statements you have?
No, man. I mean, in terms of the kids, I think I think it's really important, just if any kids are watching this, or the parents, like letting your kids get exposed to adversity, like making them fight through things, making them find their way around it. If as a parent or as a kid, if every single situation that happens, it's bad to you, as you're looking at it as this is what someone else did. There's only so many bad situations that happen to someone. It's like, to me, that's like the number one indicator of someone being an addict. Like, if what they do is they talk about like everything around them that goes wrong all the time, then I'm like, oh, there's something going on that's way deeper than this with you, where like you have some type of crutch that's going on in your life, because, you have to train your mind to where you're like, the most successful people are going to look back internally at what they can do better. And if you're always pointing your thing, oh, this coach, or oh, this person, or oh, this kid, or it's like you're setting yourself up for failure. So as a parent or as a kid, expose yourself to adversity. And when you go through it, no matter how authentic you think you might be or credible you think you might be in your concerns, that a coach is playing favorites or a coach doesn't like you or this, that, and the other, it doesn't matter. You need to look internally to figure out, hey, man, what truth is there to the things that you can do to get better? And if you do that, that's going to help you a ton. And the last thing I would just say is be so strict about your circle. Like, you should be able to look at every single person you spend your time with, and you should be able to write something down right next to their name, one single trait. I do this every single month for myself that they bring to your life that helps elevate you. And if you can't write something down next to their name where you're like, hey man, this person brings this positive energy, it's helping me get to my vision, down next to their name, they don't deserve to be in the notebook. And so they don't really deserve to carve out a lot of time in your life.
All right, man. Great having you on. A lot of awesome insight. Appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
All right, take it easy. Stay safe.